They called me a gold digger at my own engagement party. The groom's family whispered behind my back, thinking I wasn't good enough for their precious son. But when my brother walked through those doors, their laughter died instantly. What happened next changed everything forever. Hi, I'm Jasmine, and today I'm sharing the most shocking night of my life. If you've ever been underestimated or judged unfairly, this story will hit close to home. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what happens next. Let me take you back to 6 months ago, when I first met Ryan. I was grading papers at my favorite coffee shop downtown, completely absorbed in my work as a third-grade teacher. That's when this charming guy accidentally bumped into my table, spilling coffee all over my lesson plans. Instead of just apologizing and walking away, he sat down, helped me clean up, and insisted on buying me another coffee. Ryan had this genuine smile and easy laugh that made me forget about my ruined papers. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me he worked in finance, and I shared stories about my students. What struck me most was how he listened, really listened when I spoke about my passion for teaching. Most people's eyes glaze over when I mention molding young minds, but Ryan seemed fascinated. Our relationship blossomed quickly. Ryan would surprise me with little things, my favorite pastries, flowers for no reason, or sometimes he'd just show up at my apartment with takeout after a long day. He never made me feel like my modest lifestyle was lacking. When I cooked simple meals in my tiny kitchen, he'd light up like I'd prepared a 5-star feast. When we watched movies on my old couch, he'd pull me close and say it was perfect. I knew Ryan came from money. His clothes were expensive, his car was sleek, and he lived in a penthouse downtown. But he never flaunted it or made me feel small because of our different backgrounds. He'd casually mention family dinners or business trips, but I didn't realize just how wealthy his family was until he proposed. The proposal itself was beautiful, intimate and personal, just the two of us at the same coffee shop where we met. But when he started talking about the engagement party his family insisted on throwing, I felt my first flutter of anxiety. "They're excited to meet you," he said, squeezing my hand. "Mom's already planning everything." I should have paid more attention to that worried look that flickered across his face when he mentioned his mother. The week leading up to the party, I agonized over what to wear. I wanted to make a good impression, but I also didn't want to pretend to be someone I wasn't. I finally settled on a simple red dress, nothing too fancy, but elegant enough for the occasion. Ryan assured me I looked beautiful, but I caught him fidgeting with his tie more than usual as we drove to his family's estate. When we pulled up to the mansion, my breath caught in my throat. I'd seen big houses before, but this was something else entirely. The circular driveway was lined with luxury cars, and the house itself looked like something out of a magazine. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched as far as I could see, and the entrance was flanked by marble columns. "Wow," I whispered, suddenly feeling very small in my department store dress. Ryan squeezed my hand. "It's just a house, Jasmine. These are just people." But the moment we walked through those massive front doors, I knew these weren't just people. This was old money, generations of wealth that created an invisible barrier around everyone in the room. The women were dripping in diamonds, the men wore watches that probably cost more than my yearly salary, and everyone moved with that particular confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Ryan's mother, Patricia, glided toward us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was elegant in the way that only comes from a lifetime of privilege, perfectly styled silver hair, a cream-colored designer dress, and jewelry that caught the light with every movement. "Jasmine, darling," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "How lovely to finally meet you. Ryan has told us so much about you." Her tone was polite, but I caught the way her eyes quickly assessed my dress, my shoes, my simple jewelry. I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Thank you so much for having this party, Mrs. Patterson. Your home is absolutely stunning." "Please call me Patricia. And yes, it's been in the family for generations. I do hope you'll be comfortable here." The way she said comfortable made it clear she doubted I would be. Before I could respond, Ryan's sister Amanda appeared at her mother's side. Where Patricia was subtly condescending, Amanda was more direct. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows raising slightly as she took in my appearance. "So you're the teacher," Amanda said, making it sound like I'd said I was a professional mud wrestler. "How noble of you to work with children. I'm sure it's very fulfilling, even if it's not particularly lucrative." I felt my cheeks flush, but I kept my voice steady. I love what I do. There's nothing more rewarding than watching a child's face light up when they finally understand something new. "Oh, I'm sure," Amanda replied with a patronizing smile. "It must be so refreshing to have such simple pleasures in life." Ryan stepped closer to me, finally sensing the tension. "Amanda, Jasmine is amazing at what she does. She's been teaching for 5 years and her students adore her." 5 years, Patricia repeated thoughtfully. "And you're, what, 26? So you went straight from college into teaching? No gap year in Europe? No internships at prestigious companies?" "I wanted to start making a difference right away," I said, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. "I had student loans to pay off, and I was eager to get into the classroom." The mention of student loans caused a brief, uncomfortable silence. In their world, college was paid for by trust funds, not loans that would take years to repay. As the evening progressed, I was introduced to aunts, uncles, and family friends, each interaction feeling like a small test I was failing. They asked about my family with polite interest, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes when I mentioned my parents' modest jobs. My father was a mechanic. My mother worked at a grocery store. Good, honest work, but nothing that impressed this crowd. The questions kept coming, each one designed to highlight the gap between my world and theirs. Where did I go to school? A state university. Where did I live? A small apartment across town. What did my parents do? Working-class jobs. Each answer seemed to confirm their worst suspicions about me. I found myself standing alone by the champagne table, watching Ryan work the room with easy confidence. This was his world, and he belonged here in a way I never would. I was trying to work up the courage to approach a group of women who looked about my age when I overheard their conversation. "She seems sweet enough," one of them was saying. "But really, what does Ryan see in her?" "It's obvious, isn't it?" another replied. "She's after his money. I mean, look at her. She's pretty enough, but she's so ordinary." "Poor Ryan," the first woman sighed. "He's always been too trusting. Remember when he dated that girl from college? At least she had a good family background." I stood frozen, the champagne glass trembling in my hand. These women didn't even know me, but they'd already decided I was a gold digger, a fortune hunter who'd somehow tricked their precious Ryan into proposing. The worst part was that Ryan seemed oblivious to what was happening. He was deep in conversation with his uncles, probably talking about business or golf or whatever wealthy men discuss at parties. He had no idea that his family was systematically dismantling my character behind his back. As the evening wore on, the comments became more direct. Patricia cornered me in the powder room, her mask of politeness finally slipping. "Jasmine, dear," she said, reapplying her lipstick with practiced precision. "I hope you understand that Ryan is very precious to us. He's the heir to a considerable fortune, and we want to make sure he's with someone who truly cares about him." "I do care about him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I love him." "I'm sure you do," Patricia replied, but her tone suggested she thought nothing of the sort. But love doesn't always conquer all, does it? There are practical considerations, compatibility, similar backgrounds, common interests. Ryan and I have plenty in common. "Do you?" Patricia turned to face me fully. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you have very little in common except for a mutual attraction that will fade once reality sets in." I wanted to argue, to defend myself in my relationship, but her words hit too close to home. I had been feeling the weight of our different worlds all evening, wondering if love really was enough to bridge such a massive gap. When I returned to the party, I heard Amanda talking to a group of cousins near the fireplace. She wasn't even trying to lower her voice anymore. "I mean, she's a public school teacher," Amanda was saying with a laugh. "Can you imagine? She probably makes less in a year than I spend on handbags, and she's wearing a dress from, what, Target?" The group burst into laughter, and I felt my face burn with humiliation. I looked around desperately for Ryan, but he was still absorbed in conversation across the room. I felt completely alone, surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than an opportunistic interloper. That's when Ryan's uncle Gerald decided to join the conversation. He'd been drinking steadily all evening, and his voice carried across the room as he made his contribution to the discussion about me. "Well, at least we know she's not after him for his looks," Gerald said with a loud guffaw. "Poor girl's probably never seen this much money in one place. Can't really blame her for trying to upgrade her situation." The laughter that followed was like a knife to my heart. These people, who barely knew me, had reduced me to nothing more than a stereotype. In their eyes, I wasn't a dedicated teacher who worked 60-hour weeks to help struggling students. I wasn't a woman who loved their son for his kindness and humor. I was just another gold digger who'd gotten lucky. I excused myself and stepped out onto the terrace, needing air and space to process what was happening. The night was cool, and I wrapped my arms around myself as I looked out over the perfectly manicured gardens. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Daniel. "How's the party going? Are they treating my little sister well?" I stared at the message, tears threatening to spill over. Daniel had always been my protector, even when we were kids. He was 8 years older than me, and he'd worked multiple jobs to help pay for my college when our parents couldn't afford it. He'd been so proud when I got my teaching job, and he was thrilled when I told him about Ryan. But Daniel didn't know about this side of Ryan's family. He didn't know that they saw me as a threat, as someone who didn't belong in their world. I'd been so focused on impressing them that I'd forgotten I had people who loved me exactly as I was. I was about to text back when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, hoping it was Ryan, but it was Patricia. "Getting some air?" she asked, joining me at the railing. "I know these parties can be overwhelming." "It's a lovely evening," I said, not trusting myself to say more. "Jasmine, I want to be honest with you." Patricia's voice was gentler now, but somehow that made it worse. "I think you're a nice girl. I really do. But I don't think you understand what you're getting into." I turned to face her, and she continued. "This family, this lifestyle, it's not as glamorous as it might seem from the outside. There are expectations, responsibilities, social obligations. Ryan will inherit the company someday, and he'll need a wife who can handle that world." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps you should consider whether this is really what you want, whether you're truly prepared for a life that's so different from what you've known." It was the kindest way anyone had told me I wasn't good enough all evening, but it hurt the most because it came with a veneer of maternal concern. "I think I know what I want," I said quietly. "Do you?" Patricia's voice was sadder now. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're drowning in a world you don't understand. And that's not fair to you or to Ryan." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't find the words. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was drowning. When we returned to the party, I felt like everyone was watching me, waiting for me to do something that would confirm their worst opinions. I tried to engage in conversations, but every interaction felt stilted and forced. I was hyper-aware of every word I said, every gesture I made. That's when Ryan finally noticed something was wrong. He appeared at my side, his brow furrowed with concern. "Hey, you okay? You seem quiet?" I wanted to tell him everything, about the whispered comments, the cruel laughter, his mother's gentle but devastating suggestion that I wasn't right for his world. But looking at his face, so earnest and caring, I realized he genuinely had no idea what was happening. "I'm fine," I lied, "just a little tired." "We can leave soon," he promised, squeezing my hand. "I just need to say goodbye to a few more people." But as he led me back into the crowd, I heard Amanda's voice rise above the general chatter. She was telling a story to a group of friends, her voice bright with malicious amusement. So then she said she wanted to make a difference with her teaching, Amanda was saying, mimicking my voice with exaggerated earnestness, as if being a kindergarten teacher is going to change the world. It's so cute when poor people think their little jobs matter. Amanda, she teaches third grade, someone corrected with a laugh. Third grade, kindergarten, what's the difference? The point is she's delusional if she thinks she's going to fit into this family. Can you imagine her at the country club? At charity galas? She'd be completely out of her depth. The group burst into laughter, and I felt something break inside me. I'd endured their condescension all evening, but hearing my life's work dismissed as meaningless was the final straw. Before I could stop myself, I stepped forward. Actually, I teach third grade, and yes, I do think it matters. I think helping children learn to read and write and think critically about the world around them is incredibly important work. The laughter died abruptly, and Amanda turned to face me with surprise that quickly morphed into embarrassment at being caught. "Oh, Jasmine, I didn't see you there. You were just mocking my career and my life," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I get it. I'm not wealthy, I don't have a trust fund, and I didn't go to an Ivy League school. But I work hard, I care about what I do, and I love your brother. I'm sorry if that's not enough for you." The room had gone quiet, and I could feel everyone watching us. Patricia appeared at Amanda's side, her face pale with mortification. "Jasmine, dear, I'm sure Amanda didn't mean—" "Yes, she did," I said quietly. "You all did. I've spent this entire evening listening to you discuss whether I'm worthy of Ryan, whether I'm here for his money, whether I belong in your world. And you know what? Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I never will." I turned to leave, but Amanda's voice stopped me. "Well, at least she's finally being honest about it," Amanda said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "I mean, let's be realistic here. What could a public school teacher possibly offer someone like Ryan except the obvious?" That's when I felt my phone buzz again. Daniel had texted, "Hope you're having fun. If anyone gives you trouble, let me know. I'll be in the city tomorrow anyway." Looking at that message, I realized I was tired of defending myself to people who had already decided I wasn't good enough. I was tired of pretending their opinions mattered more than my own self-worth. I typed back quickly, "Actually, could you come now? I could use some support." His response was immediate. "On my way. Give me the address." I sent him the location and then turned back to the room full of people who'd spent the evening tearing me down. "You know what? I think I'll wait for my ride outside." As I walked toward the door, I heard Patricia calling after me. "Jasmine, please, let's talk about this rationally." But I was done talking. I was done trying to prove myself to people who would never accept me no matter what I did. I stepped outside into the cool night air and waited. 20 minutes later, I saw headlights turning into the driveway. But instead of Daniel's usual car, a convoy of black SUVs was approaching the house. I watched in confusion as they pulled up to the entrance, wondering if the Pattersons were expecting more guests. The first SUV stopped directly in front of the main entrance, and I saw security personnel step out. They were clearly professionals, dressed in dark suits and moving with the kind of awareness that comes from extensive training. They positioned themselves strategically around the entrance as the second SUV pulled up. That's when I realized what was happening. The passenger door of the second SUV opened, and my brother Daniel stepped out. But this wasn't the Daniel I was used to seeing in his casual clothes when he visited my apartment. This was Daniel in his full professional capacity, perfectly tailored suit, confidence radiating from every movement, surrounded by a security detail that moved like a well-oiled machine. You see, there's something I hadn't told Ryan's family about my background, something I'd kept private because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for who my brother was. Daniel wasn't just my protective older brother. He was Daniel Chen, CEO of Chen Industries, one of the most successful tech companies in the country. He'd built his empire from nothing, starting with a small software company in college and growing it into a multinational corporation worth billions. But to me, he was still just Daniel. The brother who helped me with my homework, who taught me to drive, who was there for every important moment in my life. He'd always insisted that I live my own life, make my own way, and never use his name or wealth as a crutch. As Daniel approached the entrance, I saw movement inside the house. People were gathering at the windows, trying to see what was happening. Through the glass, I could see the confusion on their faces as they took in the security detail and the obviously important arrival. Daniel spotted me immediately and smiled, the same warm, genuine smile I'd known my whole life. He walked over and pulled me into a hug, ignoring the fact that we were being watched by a house full of people. "Hey, little sister," he said softly. "Rough night?" "Something like that," I managed, feeling the weight of the evening's humiliation lifting slightly just from his presence. "Well, let's go inside and meet these people who've been making you feel unwelcome." As we walked toward the entrance, I could hear the buzz of conversation inside growing louder. Someone had obviously recognized Daniel, and word was spreading quickly through the party. The front door opened before we reached it, and Patricia appeared, her face pale with shock. Behind her, I could see the other guests crowding into the foyer, their earlier smugness replaced by confusion and growing panic. "Mr. Chen," Patricia stammered, clearly struggling to process what was happening. We weren't expecting, that is, we didn't realize that Jasmine was my sister?" Daniel's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Yes, I imagine that might have changed how you treated her this evening." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Amanda in the background, her face white with horror as she realized the implications of her earlier comments. Ryan pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. "Daniel," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're Jasmine's brother?" "I am," Daniel replied, his arms still around my shoulders. "And I understand there's been some confusion about my sister's worth and intentions." Patricia was struggling to form words. "Mr. Chen, if we had known... we never intended... That is, we certainly didn't mean any disrespect." "Didn't you?" Daniel's question was quiet, but it carried clearly through the room. "Because from what I understand, you've spent the evening questioning my sister's motives, mocking her career, and suggesting she's not good enough for your family." The crowd in the foyer was growing as more people pushed forward to witness this unexpected confrontation. I could see the panic in their eyes as they realized they'd been insulting the sister of one of the most powerful men in the country. Amanda finally found her voice, though it was shaking. "Mr. Chen, we didn't know if we had realized who Jasmine was." "Who she was?" Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's exactly who she's always been. A dedicated teacher, a caring person, a woman who works hard and loves deeply. The only thing that's changed is that now you know her last name carries some weight." He looked around the room, making eye contact with the people who had been so dismissive of me earlier. "My sister chose not to use our family name or wealth because she wanted to be valued for who she is, not what she has. She wanted to build her own life, make her own way. I respected that choice, even though it meant watching people judge her unfairly." Ryan stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Jasmine, I had no idea. I knew you had a brother, but I didn't realize." "She didn't tell you because she didn't want it to matter," Daniel said simply. "She wanted you to love her for herself, not for her connections or her family's money." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very people who had accused me of being a gold digger were now faced with the reality that I had access to more wealth than they did. I just chose not to use it. Patricia was still struggling to salvage the situation. "Mr. Chen, please understand, we had no way of knowing if Jasmine had mentioned her family background." "Why should she have to?" Daniel's question cut through her excuses. "Why should anyone have to prove their worth through their family's achievements? My sister is valuable because of who she is, not because of who I am." He turned to address the entire room. I've built my company from nothing, and I've learned that true character isn't measured by bank accounts or family names. It's measured by how you treat people, especially those you perceive as having less power than you." The silence stretched on as his words sank in. These people who had spent the evening convinced of their own superiority were now faced with the reality that they had shown their true colors to someone who could have significant influence over their business and social lives. But Daniel wasn't finished. "What disappoints me most is that you couldn't see what I see when I look at my sister. I see someone who has dedicated her life to helping children, who works long hours for modest pay because she believes in making a difference. I see someone who has integrity, compassion, and strength." He looked directly at Patricia. "Instead, you saw someone to be dismissed, someone whose worth was measured only by her bank account and her family's social standing. You couldn't see past your own prejudices to recognize the remarkable woman standing in front of you." Amanda, who had been so cruel earlier, was now visibly shaking. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "You meant exactly what you said," Daniel replied calmly. "You meant to make my sister feel small and unwelcome. You meant to suggest she was here for money rather than love. You meant to mock her career and her life choices." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The only thing you didn't mean was to be held accountable for it." Ryan finally spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. "Jasmine, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were treating you this way. I should have noticed, should have protected you." I looked at Ryan, this man I'd thought I loved, and realized that his apology, while sincere, missed the point entirely. He was sorry because he'd discovered I was connected to power and wealth, but what about being sorry because his family had treated another human being cruelly? "Ryan," I said quietly, "the problem isn't that you didn't know about my brother. The problem is that you didn't defend me when your family was tearing me apart. You didn't notice that the woman you claimed to love was being humiliated in your own home." The truth of my words hit him visibly, and he stepped back as if I'd slapped him. Daniel squeezed my shoulder gently. "I'm proud of you, Jasmine. You've handled this with more grace than they deserved." He looked back at the assembled crowd. "I want to be clear about something. My sister doesn't need my money or my influence to be worthy of respect. She's worthy of respect because she's a good person who makes the world better through her work and her character." Patricia made one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Mr. Chen, please know that we have the utmost respect for your sister. Perhaps we can start over, have dinner, get to know each other properly." "I don't think so," Daniel said firmly. "You've already shown who you are. My sister deserves better than people who only value her when they think she might be useful to them." He turned to me. "Ready to go home?" I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. As we walked toward the door, I could hear the frantic whispers starting behind us. These people were already calculating the damage, wondering how this night would affect their business relationships and social standing. But I didn't care anymore. I was done trying to prove myself to people who would never truly accept me. I was done pretending that their approval mattered more than my own self-worth. As we reached the SUV, I turned back to look at the house one more time. Through the windows, I could see the party guests still gathered in the foyer, their faces a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and panic. Ryan appeared in the doorway, calling my name, but I didn't stop. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Daniel held the car door open for me. "You know," he said with a slight smile, "I was looking forward to meeting your fiancé. Too bad he couldn't be bothered to defend you when it mattered." As we drove away, I felt something I hadn't felt all evening. Peace. The people at that party had shown me exactly who they were, and I was grateful for the lesson. I deserved better than conditional acceptance. I deserved better than people who only valued me for my connections. And most importantly, I deserved better than a man who would stand by while his family attacked the woman he claimed to love. The next morning, I returned Ryan's engagement ring by messenger, along with a simple note. "I hope you find someone your family considers worthy. I hope I find someone who knows I already am." 3 months later, I met someone new, a fellow teacher who appreciated my passion for education and saw my worth without needing to know my brother's name. When I introduced him to Daniel, he was impressed but not intimidated. He respected my choice to build my own life while still honoring my family connections. That's the difference between genuine respect and conditional acceptance. Real love doesn't need a net worth statement to prove its validity, and that's how one night changed everything. Sometimes the people who underestimate us get the biggest shock of their lives. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe for more incredible true stories, and remember, never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Your worth isn't determined by your bank account, your family name, or other people's opinions. It's determined by your character, your actions, and the love you bring to the world. I'll see you in the next one.